Welcome back everyone, I'm Nick, this is Swiftful Thinking, and in this awesome video we're going to take what we did in the last video. We created a coin model. We're going to actually use that coin model in a view. And in this video we're going to create a row. It's basically just going to host some of the data that we are getting from our coin model. And this is going to be one of the main views in our app. If you remember the final product, the main screen has a bunch of rows that you can scroll on and see all of the coin prices and names and images. And in this video, we're going to create those rows. All right, welcome back everyone. I am back in our Xcode project. And in the last video, I know it was boring, but we set up our coin model. And this is the data that we're downloading from the internet, from CoinGecko API, and it has all this awesome data that we can then use in our app. And the main things here to point out are the name, the image, the current price, the market cap, and a bunch of other good stuff that we are going to use. And I have a picture here of actually the final app, and in this video we're going to set up these rows. So as we download coins into our app, we're going to put them into these rows that you can see here. So we're going to set up what each of these rows are, and then hopefully in the next video we actually start downloading them. So this row right here is what we're going to jump into. And because this row is on the home view, we're going to put it into the home view folder that we made. So going into our app here, we have our core folder. Let's close up the components here, and then we have our home folder. And in our home folder we have the views, and this is of course going to be a view. So I'm going to right click the views folder, create a new file. It's going to be a SwiftUI view, and let's call this coin row view. Click create. Click resume on the canvas just to make sure we're still connected. All right, and on this view, the first thing we're going to do is pass in a coin. So in the initializer, we'll say let coin of type coin model. So now every time we create a coin row view, it's going to ask us for a coin. So in the coin row, in the preview here, which is what we're seeing on the right, it's going to ask us for a coin. And now in this coin model, we could put a coin model in here and use the initializer and add all of this data here. But we're going to run into this problem a whole bunch of times as we start creating this code, because we're going to be moving these coins all around our app in a whole bunch of different screens. So every time we use a coin on a view, the preview is then going to ask us for that coin data, just like this. So instead of typing this coin out every time and creating a preview coin every single time, we're going to create one class that we can just reuse for all of our previews. Before we get into this, I'm just going to actually delete this to get rid of the errors quickly. And the previews conforms to PreviewProvider. So we're going to actually create an extension of PreviewProvider. So in our extensions folder, I'm going to right click, create a new file. It's going to be a Swift file, and I'm going to call this PreviewProvider. Click create. Then in here, of course, we are going to add an extension of PreviewProvider and then open the brackets. And PreviewProvider is part of the SwiftUI framework, so we have to import SwiftUI. So I'm going to create another class outside of this extension. We're going to create a class. I'm going to call this Developer Preview. And then I'm going to open the brackets. And I'm going to make this a singleton. So we'll say static let instance equals developer preview, open close parentheses. So this is one single instance of this developer preview, and it's going to be the only instance we have in our entire app. So because we're initializing it right here within this class, we can actually make the initializer private. So we'll add private init, and then we will open close parentheses and then open close the brackets. And just to reiterate, we're making this private because if this was public init, we have a theoretical situation where somewhere else in our code, someone could initialize another instance. So someone could say let new instance equals developer preview, open close parentheses, and then we would have two instances of developer preview in our app. But if we make it private, we can ensure that we can only initialize it from within the class. So because this is outside the class down here, we're now getting the error message that we can't initialize it. So that's what we want. And from our preview provider, we're going to create a static var. We'll call it dev, and this will be of type developer preview. We'll open the brackets, and this is going to return the developer preview.instance. So by adding this static var, anytime we call preview provider, we can then call .dev, and that's going to give us the instance of this developer preview that we want. And inside this developer preview, we're going to add some data that we're going to use in our previews. And before we move forward, I do want to point out that extending this preview provider and creating this developer preview class is a personal preference. This is the easiest way I've found to deal with these previews in SwiftUI, but there are other ways to do it. So I don't want to knock any other way that you might have learned, but I do think this is super efficient. And the only thing we need to watch out for when we're doing this is that theoretically we could call developer preview.instance from anywhere in our code, and then we can use this preview. So if you are using this, you just want to make sure that you never actually use the developer preview in the production code. So like in the CoinRow previews, we can use the developer preview inside this preview provider, but we never want to use it within the actual view when we're releasing that to the App Store, because the developer preview is obviously fake data that we don't want in our actual app. So in here, we're going to actually create a coin. We're going to say let coin, and we'll set it equal to a coin model. So here we're going to initialize a coin we will then use for all of the previews throughout our app. So this is much more efficient in the long run. And I've actually put this file, this developer preview file, in the resources folder as well. So you can go into that folder and then just copy and paste the coin that we have in that folder, because I want to actually use model Bitcoin data for our previews. So I'm just going to actually paste in those values because I want to use the actual Bitcoin values so that our previews look pretty realistic. And you guys can pause this here if you really want to type this out, or you could put in your own fake data. But I recommend using the one from the resources folder because it's going to look better just to see the actual how Bitcoin would actually look in our app. And we also get all this sparkline data, which is a lot of data if you wanted to type it out. And if you did copy and paste the preview provider file from the resources, at the bottom it's going to have other variables. You can just comment those out for now because we haven't made them in our app yet. So now that we have this developer preview and we have a coin in the developer preview, we can finally jump back into our CoinRow view. We can add in, we can say let coin of type coin model. And now our preview is asking for a coin. And the magic here is that anytime our preview asks for a coin now, because we created an extension of preview provider, and that extension has this dev variable, which is the instance of the developer preview, in here we can just call dev dot, and then we can access that coin that we just made. So if I click try again, it should actually build now. And you can see how this is going to be super efficient, because now if we have 100 different views in our app and we keep creating a bunch of views that need coins as the preview, we can just call dev.coin every time, and we don't have to go and type out a new coin for every preview. Let's make sure it's working. So in this text, let's just add the coin.name. It should say Bitcoin. Awesome. All right, so let's get rid of this text and let's create a HStack. On the HStack, I'm going to add spacing of 0, and then we'll open the brackets. And way on the left of the HStack, we're going to add a text that has the rank of the coin. So here we're going to put coin.rank, and that rank is an integer, so we need to then convert it to a string. So we'll use the string, we'll use the backslash open close parentheses, put in our rank. Let's give this a font of caption. Give this a foreground color of color.theme.secondary text. It should be gray. And just to point out here, we're using the color theme that we set up at the beginning. So that's why we did that first, because this is now going to be super efficient as we start making all these views. And then finally, I want to give this a frame with a minimum width, say min width of 30. Just to make sure it is at least 30 pixels wide. And just to throw it out there, when I first made the app, I didn't have like this frame on the one, and then I noticed that it looked a little weird, and I came back and added it later. So that's why we're just starting with this. I'm not just like pulling this out of the sky knowing that this is going to work. If you were making this yourself, obviously there's some guess and check involved. But to the right of this number 1, we're going to have the image, the logo for this coin. Now we're going to actually need to download that from the internet, which we don't have it yet. So for now, let's just add a circle. That's where, and the circle will be where the image goes. Let's give it a frame with a width of 30 and a height of 30, and we don't need the alignment. Next to that, let's add another text. This time, let's use the coin.symbol. And the symbol is lowercase, it comes through, so let's just call it .uppercase to make it uppercased. Let's give this a font of headline. Let's add a little spacing to the left, so we'll do .padding, .leading, (6). Looks good. And then let's change the color. We'll give it a .foreground color of color.theme.accent. So the accent color is black, and it is still black, but if we go into dark mode, it should switch to that pink. Then I'm going to add a spacer here. And then on the right side, we're going to add a VStack, open the brackets. And in here, we're going to add a text. We're going to use the coin.current price. We want to make it a string, so we're going to use the quotes, / open close parentheses, and we'll add in the current price. And then we're also going to do a text, and we want the coin.price change percentage 24 hour. And we want to make this a string as well, so we'll use the quotes, / open close parentheses, and add price change 24 hour. It is optional, so we'll say otherwise 0. And this should be our percentage, right? So this is 6.8%, so we can add the percent here. This first text, let's make it .bold. Let's give it a .foreground color of color.theme.accent. And the percentage, and then for the percentage, let's change the color whether or not it's positive or negative. So we'll call it .foreground color. And here we're going to check coin.price change 24 hour. And then because it's optional, we'll do otherwise 0, put that in parentheses. So if the price change is greater than or equal to 0, question mark, we're going to use color.theme.green. Otherwise, we're going to use color.theme.red. So we have our red and our green colors here. So now that's our nice green. It's part of our theme. So if this is like a -%, this should be red. If it's positive, it's green. On this VStack, let's give it an alignment of trailing. So it's pushed to the right side. And before we move on, we're going to do a little bit of formatting, because as you can see, the way that the data comes through, this 61,000 here with a whole bunch of zeros, it's probably correct data, but this is not very like user friendly. This doesn't look the way we want it to look in our app, so we need to format it into maybe add the money sign to make it currency, and then get rid of some of these decimals here. So this current price, if I hold the option button and click on current price, it is a double. So we're gonna add an extension to double so that we can convert it into the currency. So in our extensions file, we're going to right click, create a new file. It's going to be a Swift file. We're going to call it double. Click create. And in here, you guessed it, we're going to extend with an extension of double. Open the brackets. In here, we're going to create a currency formatter. So we're going to say private var. We're going to say currency formatter. I'll add the number 6 here. And this will be of type number formatter, open the brackets. We're going to make it a computed property because we're going to edit the formatter before returning it. We're going to say let formatter, and we're going to set it equal to a number formatter. And we're going to open close parentheses, and then let's return the formatter so these errors go away. And then we're going to customize this formatter before returning it. So we'll say formatter dot uses grouping separator. Set that equal to true. I think this means that we want to use the commas. I'm actually not 100% positive, but I know that I use it all the time. Let's also add the formatter.number style. Let's set this equal to the currency. You can see here some of the cool other like styles that we can use: percentage, scientific. We're just going to use currency here. And just to show you guys, we could call formatter.locale and set this equal to maybe current. We could say formatter.currency code, and we could set that equal to USD. And we can say formatter.currency symbol, and we could set that equal to a money sign. So these are actually the default values because my locale is US dollars. But if you wanted to like override the currency, this is how you would do it. You would change this to like GBP. You could change this to like a different symbol here if you wanted a different symbol on your data. So here I'm just going to put a comment. This is the default value. Down here, this would be to change the currency. And here would be to change currency symbol. And I just want to point out quickly that this double file is actually also in the resources folder, so you can copy and paste it. But in this video, I didn't want to just paste it in here and then move forward because I wanted to actually explain everything that we are doing, because I think it is good for those of you who are trying to learn so that you can do this on your own. But anyway, we're not going to actually use this locale because that's the default. The currency code is default and the currency symbol is default. The magic we're going to add here is the formatter.minimum fraction digits and the formatter.maximum fraction digits. This is how many decimal places that we want to allow this formatter to have. And we're going to set this equal to 2, and we're going to set the maximum equal to 6. So depending on the actual number, this will format with between 2 and 6 decimal places. And again, this is something that I have tested out in the app and I realized that it looked good. I didn't start with 2 and 6. I'm not just making these numbers up. I think I started with like 4 and then realized that 2 to 6 just looks the best. And while we're here, let's just add a little bit of documentation. So up here above it, let's add 3 backslashes and just say converts a double into a currency with 2 to 6 decimal places. And then in this documentation, I'm going to add 3 more forward slashes and use 3 backticks, which is next to the number 1 on the keyboard. And we're going to do 3 more forward slashes, 3 more forward slashes, and then 3 more backticks. And inside, in between these 2 backticks, we can add examples. So in here, I'm going to add some examples so that if anyone else was looking at my code, they would know exactly what this current string formatter does. There was no guessing and checking. So I would say convert 1234.56 to, and it's going to convert it to the money sign 1234.56. I'm going to copy this and then paste it twice. And then the second line, we're just going to move the decimal place twice. So this will be 12.3456. It should convert it into the $12 and then 4 decimal places. So this is why we have the 2 to 6 here. And then if something was 0.123456, it should then convert it into 0 with 6 decimal places here. And again, that's why we did 2 to 6. And if I hold the option button and click on this currency formatter, we can now see our awesome documentation on this so that it converts a double to a currency with 2 to 6 decimal places. And we have a couple quick examples so that anyone else looking in our code could see this and figure out exactly what it's doing automatically. Awesome. Finally, we made this private so that we can only access this currency formatter within this extension. And now we're going to create a public variable that we're going to actually access from our code. We'll say func and we'll say as currency with 6 decimals, open close parentheses. And this is going to return us a string. We'll open the brackets. And in here, we want to return the currency formatter 6, which is what we just made, dot string from. And in here, we need to pass in an NS number into this formatter. So we'll say let number equals NS number. We can open the parentheses and we're looking for the value And we can initialize an NS number with basically any type of value. And we're going to use the double, of course, because we're in a double extension. And this is just going to be self. So then we're going to take our number and we're going to pass it into our formatter. And this formatter returns an optional string. So if it can't, for some reason, convert to the string, let's just give it a default value with a money sign 0.00. And again, this self is the current number that we're accessing it from. So we're going to call this on a double. So if I have double in my app, that is like maybe the number 10, we can call number 10 dot as currency with 6 decimals. So this self is the current value, which would then be 10. And that's what we're going to throw into the currency formatter. Let's also copy this documentation, paste it onto this function. And this converts a double into a currency as a string with 2 to 6 decimal places. And then let's just make these strings. All right, so now we should be able to use this as currency with 6 decimals from our code. So I'm going to go back into our coin row view. Let's click resume, make sure we're still connected. And down here on this current price, we actually don't need this whole string anymore. And we can now call coin dot current price, which is a double. And because we extended double, we can call dot as currency with 6 decimals. And that as currency function returns us a string. So from here, if I hold the option button and click on the as currency with 6 decimals, we can see our documentation. We can see that it returns us a string. So if I resume the canvas, hopefully our 61,000 is now formatted the way we want. That looks awesome. And while we're here, we also want to convert this percentage because all these decimal places is just a little too much. I'd rather just be like 6.87%. So let's jump back into our, so this percentage also, if I option click on it, is a double. Let's jump back into our double extension, scrolling down here. I'm going to create a func and say as number string, open close parentheses, and this will return us a string. Open the brackets, and this is going to return a string, open the parentheses. We're going to use the format completion here. And the format, we've used this a couple times in my other YouTube videos, is just going to be percentage.2f. This basically is taking the current number and just formatting it to be only 2 decimal places. And the number that we want to convert, of course, is self. Let's add a little bit of documentation here. So I'm going to copy this documentation format, paste it here. This converts a double into a string representation. And we only need one line here. And this is going to convert a number. So let's do convert maybe 1.2345. And it's going to convert the number that we input to a string. So we'll keep this string here. And we'll just make it 1.23 because only 2 decimal places is what we're getting out of this. Then we're going to create one more func. We're going to say as percent string, open close parentheses, also returns us a string, and then we'll open the brackets. We're going to return the as number string, which is what we just did up here, plus a percent sign. So same thing as this. I'm going to copy this documentation, paste it here, and this converts a double into a string representation with percent symbol. And it will convert 1.2345 to 1.23%. All right, now we can use this throughout our code as well as this. So let's jump back into the coin row view, click resume on the canvas. And instead of all this, we will just call coin.price change percentage 24 hours dot as percent string. Let's click resume, and now we have our nice preview with just 6.88%, which is exactly what we were looking for. And lastly, if I open up the simulator again, so this is what our rows look like right now. But if I click that arrow and I go to our portfolio, we also have this column in the center for the current user's current holdings. So if I had 0.5 Bitcoin, we would have 0.5 here and then the value of that 0.5. So if I had 5 Ethereum, and this would be the value. So we want to also put this column in the center. So because that column is optional, we're going to actually pass that in as a parameter into this view. So we'll say let show holdings column of type bool. So every time we create a CoinRow view, it'll ask us if we want to show the holdings column. So down here in our preview, let's just say true. All right, and then after the spacer here, I'm going to add if show holdings column, open the brackets. So if we want to show the column, let's then add another VStack, open the parentheses. Let's add a text. And we're going to use the portfolio or holdings value. This is a double that we made a couple of videos back when we created the actual value of our holdings. And then we'll call dot as currency with 6 decimals. Below that, let's add another text. We'll say coin dot current holdings, and the current holdings is optional, so we'll say otherwise 0. Put that in parentheses, and then on that parentheses, we'll call dot as number string, and we'll close the text. So on my preview here, I have 1.5 Bitcoin, which at 60,000 is about 90,000, which looks like the math here is correct. Let's do some formatting on this. Let's add the VStack. Let's add alignment of trailing. Let's change the color of these. On the VStack, we'll add a foreground color of color.theme.accent. And then on the top one, let's just call bold to make it a little thicker. All right, and then on this third column that we have down here, this VStack, I'm going to actually give it a default frame so that it's about 1/3 of the entire screen. So on here, let's call it .frame. We'll say width, and we'll set it equal to UI screen.main.bounds.width divided by 3. So this is going to be exactly 1/3 of the screen. And I want to point out here that I'm okay with using UI screen.main.bounds.width because our app is only going to be used in portrait mode. So if we go back into the navigator in the first video, we set it portrait only and not landscape left or right. So that's why we can use the width of the screen. If we were using landscape mode as well, we could actually not use this, or we shouldn't actually use this, and we should use a geometry reader. But because we're in portrait mode, we can use the width when we are creating our views. And I'm going to actually make it slightly smaller than 1/3. So let's divide it by 3.5. And I want to align it to the right side of this frame. So we'll add alignment of trailing. And I'm doing this just so that this column is ends exactly the same spot for all of our coins. Because otherwise this currency here would be different lengths. And if it was like shorter, the columns wouldn't be exactly in line. It would look a little weird. Just something I noticed also while developing the first time. A couple quick things to finish up. On this entire H-stack, let's just add a font of subheadline. So anything not formatted yet will now be formatted to a subheadline text, which just I think looks a little bit better. It's a little bit smaller, maybe a little thicker as well. And then finally, I know this 92,000 looks good right now, but it is actually using the as currency with 6 decimals that we made earlier in this video. And if I'm looking at my portfolio, I don't really care if I'm holding something that's worth 1 cent or 0.0001 cents. So it makes more sense to actually round this number to 2 decimals every time and not 6. So I'm going to right click this as currency with 6 decimals, jump to the definition. And this is what we made at the beginning of the video. I'm going to actually just copy all of this, the formatter as well as the as currency with, as well as the function. And then I'm just going to paste it above it. And in our pasted one, let's just change this to currency formatter 2. Let's set the maximum also equal to 2. So it's exactly, so the minimum is 2 and the maximum 2. So it's always going to give us 2. And then this function will be as currency with 2 decimals. And it's going to return the currency formatter 2, which is this one up here now. So this one will always give us 2 decimals. And let's just update the documentation here. So this converts a double to a currency with 2 decimal places. And because it's always 2 decimal places, that's self-explanatory. We don't need 3 examples here. Let's just leave the first one with 2. And again, with 2 decimal places, and we'll just leave the first one with 2 decimal places. All right, let's jump back into our app, resume it, and just change this out to as currency with 2 decimal places, and everything should work good. And I actually needed to clean and rebuild it so that it would connect. So you can always press Command-Shift-K to clean and rebuild. You can also go up to the Product tab and click Clean Build Folder, Command-Shift-K, just to clean it. And then the preview, hopefully you get this green light, and it is all connected, and our rows look pretty much perfect. Obviously we don't have our image coming in, but this is a great start. And let's just wrap up this video by cleaning up this view, because this code looks a little ugly and I like keeping it as neat as possible in the body section. So let's create at the bottom an extension. Let's call it CoinRowView. Open the brackets. Let's create a private var. We'll say left column conform to SumView. Open the brackets. Let's take the left column, which is going to be these 3 items here. I'm going to cut them. And because they're 3 separate items, we got to put them into an H-stack. Paste that here. Let's give this H-stack spacing of 0, like the master H-stack has. Let's take this left column, put it up here. Let's do another one. Let's do private var center column of type SumView. And let's take this VStack. Let's put center column up here. Put the code into our center column. And then finally, private var right column, type SumView. Let's take our right column here. We'll add the right column. We'll paste that here. All right. Click resume on the canvas. It should still work. Let's make this .preview layout .size that fits. And then let's just add a group here. And then let's just add a group here, and we will open the brackets. And I'm going to cut this, paste it twice, and on the bottom one we're going to call preferred color scheme, and we'll call it dark. And that's going to give us our dark mode. And I just realized that when we were creating the back in our circle button view, we use the color scheme. That should actually be .preferred color scheme .dark. And that's why it looks better with the actual dark black background. Let's go back into the code here. And in our CoinRowView, we now have the light mode as well as the dark mode, and they both look good. Alright guys, that's it for this video. I know it was a lot of setup stuff again, mostly because we were setting up that double extension, but that double extension is going to come in handy as we start building out our app. So hopefully we can start moving forward faster as we continue through this series. Alright, get excited because we are close to actually downloading some data from the internet and really getting our app together. Thank you guys for watching. As always, I'm Nick. This is Swiftful Thinking, and I'll see you in the next video.